today.
We're going to have an even more precise ability to target people we ought to be worried about.
From heightened security measures critical to our safety to confronting our nation's newest threat, Michael Chertoff lays out his plan. Don't miss Weekend Live with Brian Wilson.
Thanks for joining us on this Saturday morning. The conservative watchdog group Judicial Watch has uncovered a major story this past week. A federal judge who ruled out in Michigan that the NSA wiretapping program is, in her words, unconstitutional, could have a conflict of interest in the case.
Yeah, certainly an interesting development. Tom Fitton is the president of Judicial Watch, and he joins us from our Washington bureau. Tom, explain this potential conflict of interest.
Well, we looked at the judge's financial disclosure forms, which all judges are required to file, at least at the federal level, and she listed that she was the secretary-trustee of the Community Foundation of Southeastern Michigan. And when you look at the groups the foundation funds, the groups include the American Civil Liberties Union. And she presumably approved some of those grants, totaling at least $45,000, as much as $125,000. Wow. And that's the sort of information that ought to be disclosed. The ACLU was a litigant in her court. Certainly, the government should have been given the opportunity to ask her to recuse herself.
Right.
And she should have gone through the process of considering whether to recuse herself on her own. And now the decision, people are going to be questioning it as a result of this appearance of a conflict of interest.
So she's involved in an organization that has given a lot of money to the ACLU, and this lawsuit was the ACLU versus NSA. It seems to me, Tom, and I'm not a lawyer, but that's just an obvious thing where she'd say, you know what, I probably should sit this one out.
Well, I'm not a lawyer either, but it seems to me that may be the conclusion a lot of good folks will come to. And this is not just the only instance. There was another instance where her foundation was giving over $100,000, over 180 grand to an Arab American community group that was also a litigant before her court.
Oh my goodness.
And judges have an obligation to disclose this type of information. And frankly, if the foundation, if she ends up being in a position where she's constantly in the position of having to approve or disapprove grants to folks who come before her court, she should really pull out of the foundation.
All right. And Tom, let me ask you this then. The Justice Department is appealing the ruling, so would this be a basis for possibly overturning that ruling?
Well, I don't think necessarily. I think if it gets kicked downstairs back to her after the appeals court takes a look at the case and says, well, you know, you have to start over again or do something like that, it might be a basis for asking her to recuse herself. In the meantime, it might be the basis for an ethics complaint for those who are concerned that she should have disclosed it.
Yeah. Was she a congresswoman at some point?
I think her ex-husband was a congressman.
All right, so there is some sort of political connection there?
I mean, she's known to be a Democratic appointee. And again, another part of the pattern, back in the late 90s during these University of Michigan affirmative action cases, one of her own colleagues criticized her for trying to steer a case to someone who would be sympathetic to affirmative action away from a judge who was not sympathetic to affirmative action. So 1, 2, 3, you've got problems.
Isn't it 1, 2, 3 strikes you're out? All right, Tom Fenton, the president of Judicial Watch, thank you very much for bringing this story to our attention, sir.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Have a great weekend.
All right, just ahead on Fox and Friends, we're going to look at the most popular stories on foxnews.com.
Plus, in just a couple of minutes, we're going to talk to CENTCOM Commander General John Abizaid live from over there and find out how NATO troops taking over operations in Afghanistan will affect the global war on terror.